Hey guys, my name is Alp. I'm a cloud solution architect focusing on Azure Data Services here in the West region. I've been working with a lot of customers who have SAP Financials and are wondering about the integration between Power BI and SAP. These SAP Financial business users want to, in 3 or 5 clicks, be able to do AI or ML, machine learning on SAP Financials data. In this use case, what we're going to take a look at is SAP accounts receivable and the ability to apply machine learning to that data. Let's go and have a look. Okay, I'm in HANA Studio, and you can see that I've got an SAP accounts receivable table. I have created this from a Kaggle data set, and you can see that I've got days late, days to settle. I've got a customer ID, the date that we've got the invoice, and the due date of that invoice, okay? So let's go into PowerBI.com, and what we will do is go into PowerBI Premium, and go ahead and start with something called a data flow, okay? And PowerBI.com, for those who don't know, is our SaaS-based analytics offering from Microsoft. So the first step we're going to do is define an entity, and all an entity is really just a mapping to your data source. So let's go and take that first step. So we are going to connect back to that SAP HANA that we just saw, okay? So let's go and click SAP HANA here, and you can see all the choices that I do get. I am going to go ahead and click HANA and define the server name and the port. So I am on a virtual machine. This is from the SAP Cal library, and that's what you're seeing right now. So I'm connecting to that SAP HANA database. I have created a data gateway, so that data gateway is necessary to connect to that SAP HANA database. So I'm going to go ahead and click Next, and let's go and establish that connection. And while that's running, I just want to quickly take a look at this other tab here. I did a quick inventory on the SAP documentation just to see what type of information models and views that I've got. And you can see I've got a lot of information models just on accounts receivable and other types of financials. So these ones would be the ones that you guys would be connecting to in your real life scenario, as opposed to me, who would just develop a sample data set, and we're going to go and attach to that. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and click SAP accounts receivable. And remember, I am a business analyst. I do want to do something very powerful, AI or ML related, and I want to do that in a GUI driven way in 3 clicks or 5 clicks. So in our specific use case, we are going to try and predict when a customer will pay. So the idea here is, if I know from my accounts receivable when a customer will pay, I will be able to better manage my cash flow. And the better I can manage my cash flow, I can obviously get higher rates of return because I can allocate that money more accordingly, okay? So now what we've done is we've entered the information, we've selected our accounts receivable, and now I get that data set back. So no different than the HANA Studio client, okay? That's where we were. And you can see right here that I am connected to that HANA database, okay? So let's go back to that data source again, just so that we can see where we are. All right, going from left to right, you can see my invoice amount, my days late, if it's late, yes or no, and how many days it was, and how many days it took to settle, okay? So invoice number, customer ID, country code, and was there a dispute, yes or no? Okay, so let's go and save this query. So now we've defined our connection to this data set. So we've defined an entity. Let's go ahead and click Save. Okay. Let's close out of this. And what we're going to now do is go to the second little brain icon there. We're going to go ahead and apply a machine learning model. Okay, so right away it says, hey, I've got SAP accounts receivable. That's the entity defined. What do you want to predict? So we want to predict days to settle. So how many days is going to take to settle? Now, we are going to do a regression because we're doing days to settle. However, if we wanted to figure out if the customer was even late, we could have selected trying to predict if a customer was late. So are they late, yes or no? Then we would use a general classification. However, in our case, we are using a regression. All right, so let's go and click Next. What I'm going to do is deselect days late, because days late and days to settle are related to one another. So I do want our model not to take the days late as part of this analysis. Okay, so I'm going to deselect that. And let's go in and click Next. Perfect. So now let's go and name this model. This is going to be our training part of the model. And if you can see, as I write the training name of the model down below, we can allocate more time or less time to training time. So obviously, if you've got more data or if you've got more time, the more training time you can give the compute, obviously your calculation will be better. Just for the purposes of demo, I'll just keep it at something short, and I would go ahead to click save and close. So now this will go and run for a certain amount of time. I have already run this, obviously, so for demo purposes, I will just show you a previous execution that I've already done. So let's go and take a look at that. There we go, that's the one that I've done. Okay, so I'll go ahead and select the SAP Accounts Receivable Final, and we'll take it from there. And the great thing about this is I basically get two artifacts returned to me, okay? So I get a model accuracy, and it is a report for me to consume. So when I click on that little icon there, it's giving me a report analysis. So it's gonna say, hey, I've created a model for you. I've went and tuned it several different ways. I've selected the best one for you. And behind the scenes, it's using Azure Machine Learning Service in order to do that. And that is basically a PaaS type of a service where you're calling it, and we have called it, and now it's applying that type of a model on our data, okay? So this is now generating a report for us, just so that it'll be easy for us to consume. So this is going to be artifact number 1, okay? There we go. So it says, hey, it kind of describes how the model was evaluated. It says, hey, my model accuracy was 94%. Here is an actual versus predicted. So you can see certain values across the board, and that pink line and blue line indicate how close the predictions were to the actual values. So if I hover over some of these, you kind of get an idea. On the right-hand side, what we've done is kind of bucketed these into residual errors by days to settle. So the ones that are a little bit farther to the right are the ones that were less correct, or I should say the farther ones from the top or farther ones from the bottom. So if I click on that, that gives you a spread, how far some of these predictions are. I'm going to go ahead and click on the top where it says see top predictors, and this will tell us like what are the top predictors in determining if the payment's going to be the number of days of payment. So if there's a dispute, obviously that's going to mean that the payment date is likely going to be higher, and certain customers are going to pay slower than other customers. So these two factors are the biggest factors in determining when a days to settle will happen. Okay, so let's close out of that. So again, this is my first artifact, so I get an idea of the model, so I know it's fairly accurate. It's 95% accuracy from a modeling perspective. I want to now take you to the second thing. Let's go back and edit our original data source. So typically how this will work is I would refresh my data source, and I would call this model that I've created. So I've got a model in place, and what I can do is call that model with my new data, okay? So in this case, it's the same data that we have, okay? But what we are going to do is we're gonna go and click on that AI Insights that you're seeing up top, on the top right. And what that AI Insights button will do is it will create two new columns for us, okay? So right now you see days to settle, days late. I am going to click on that AI Insights button on the far right, and that will go and call the model we've already created. So it will go and call it as a function, okay? Again, this is data that we already had, but imagine we can go and either create a new query and create a new data set and have this, this interface to be able to call the AI Insights, okay? So let's wait here a moment. Okay, again, just to recap, we are now taking the second artifact. We are now assuming we've gotten new data. We are going to submit this data that we've got here into the AI ML model that we've already built in about 3 steps, if you guys remember. And now we will actually get a prediction. So we will get a prediction on this data set. It'll say, hey, I had a predicted value of X, and here was the actual. So you can actually go and compare that. All right, so this is how you can do your financial analysis and kind of figure out cash flow optimization as you get new accounts receivable. And again, like this is just, kind of, a very simplistic scenario. It's a scenario that, every accounts receivable, every organization should be doing and could be doing very easily. Okay, so let's go and find the one that we did. You can see somewhere here it says SAP Accounts Receivable. That's what we called our function. I'm going to go find it. There it is. It's down below. SAP Accounts Receivable Final. And what's going to happen next is when I click on that, we're calling that as a function, but it says, okay, I see your data source. and please make sure that we map this correctly. So all we're doing is mapping the data that it's expecting, and that's what we've done. We're going to go and click apply. And what this will go back and do is it'll submit this raw data that we've gotten, and it'll go back and it'll apply the model to this new data. So what you're seeing right now, we are in Power Query. We've obviously, you can see, where it says applied steps, we define the source, we define the headers, so on and so forth. And right now what we're doing is we're actually calling that model, and eventually when the model returns those values to us, it's going to return two values or two columns. It's going to return a column that says, hey, here's the, based on this new data that you've given me, here's my predicted value. And the final column will be, hey, here's just a kind of a metadata column that I'm going to return to you. Okay, so that's what we're going to see in the next few seconds here. Okay, so now that the function is completed, let's go take a look and find out what those two new columns look like. Okay, like I said, you've got the predicted column here on the second to the last, and then you've got some of the metadata on the last column itself. So let's take a look at how accurate this is. Okay, so let's take a look. I've got days to sell. This was the actual. If I look at row 2, the actual was 36. We predicted 37. Row 5 says 34. We predicted 35. 48 and 48 on row 9. So, you can see it's a fairly accurate prediction. Again, it didn't take a whole lot to do this, and there's a lot of huge value in doing it.